Welcome back to another episode of the Me in the Making podcast. My name is Meli Clay. I'm your host, and thank you for coming back. This is a show about self discovery, introspection, reflection upon learning more about yourself. Maybe you want to learn more about how you interact with people, why you might think the ways that you might think, your journey from when you were younger to where you are now, et cetera. Like, how did you get to where you are? What are the lessons that you've learned along the way? How would you like to apply those lessons, et cetera? Those are some of the things that we talk about on this podcast. And this is season 3, and this is video and as well as audio. And we have seasons 1 and 2 that were audio only. And in seasons 1 and 2, I am mainly talking to guests and I ask them questions about, who they are now, who they were before, what has their journey been as they have grown and gotten older and maybe gone through lived in different cities, had different jobs, gone to schooling, etc. What is their family life like, friends? Basically, what makes you up? What how have you become who you've become and where are you becoming? And in this season, I have been doing some solo episodes and I will also have guests on the show where we dive into all that stuff. And you might be getting to this point and you might be thinking, this feels really serious. And it's not meant to be serious, it's meant to be curious and really to think about who you are, how you relate to other people, how you show up in your community, etc. So yeah, we also like to have fun. We laugh on this show. So I hope that you enjoy what I talk about. I like to talk about a lot of different things that I've been thinking about and ruminating on. And this week, I want to talk about the loss of community. I've been thinking about this for months now, I would say, but it's something that has been impacting me since the pandemic. And if you have been here on previous episodes, you will hear me talking about things where I feel like the pandemic has led to certain things, and I don't always want to blame the pandemic about certain things, but really it's not necessarily blame. It's pointing us back to where a lot of things started, at least recently. And the loss of community for me has been twofold. And for one of those losses of community, it was beneficial for me to leave that space. Another space that had been taken away from me was actually the workplace space. And please don't groan. This is not an episode about the reasons why we should go back into the office if you are 100% remote, if you're hybrid. Believe me, I love that. I am not trying to advocate for let's all go back into the office so it can be like it was before. No. And oh. But losing that community of seeing a lot of people every single day, at least Monday through Friday during the week, making some friends has like the ending of that, the abrupt ending of that, with it not being a choice for me, has been hard. And as I reflect on, how that change has been impacting me, I've been ruminating on it. And I actually did a blog post about this. I released it a few months before, and I'll link it in the show notes if anyone wants to take a read. Because I'll touch on some things in that blog post that I won't talk about in this episode. So feel free to go back and read it if you haven't already. And but yeah, let me start at the beginning. So leaving two communities where I was a part of and now I'm not a part of. One of them was a church community and the other one is my workplace community. So I decided to leave that church at the end of 2020, and it was the best decision for me. I feel very free, very lifted from that experience. And I talk more about it in season 2, episode 1. And it was something that needed to happen. But there was also collateral damage, same as there's collateral damage with leaving the workplace space. And the collateral damage is that there were people who were in that church that I have built some good relationships with, or at least I thought that I had. And I would see them every week, sometimes twice a week. We would hang out outside of church. We would do a lot of things together and building up that rhythm and seeing those people, having people who I could talk to about various different things and some people who where we had the same belief system, etc. Like that was very beneficial for me to have in my life. And when I chose to leave that church, I wasn't necessarily thinking that I was going to be leaving the community that I had built. I thought that the look of it was going to shift. Granted, of course, I wouldn't be seeing everyone who I would see every Sunday, but those people who I had chosen to remain in my life, I was thinking that I would continue seeing them and continue building a life. But that was not the case. I left, I wrote a letter, people knew why I was leaving. But I was saying that I was leaving the church. I wasn't saying that I was leaving those friendships. And I suppose I assumed, which is my own naivete, I assumed that those people would reach out to me because I wasn't leaving them. I was leaving the institution, as it were. And some people I did talk to, and, we had conversations, etc. But other people, I guess, were not as curious as I was expecting them to be. And I would see them in some social gatherings because I was friends with some other people and they would be invited. And the more I would see them around, and during the times when we were not speaking about like why I left, no one was curious about those things. That's when I realized maybe I had overestimated some of these people, and I learned, oh, these some of these people are really not for me, and this is a great reason to stop being friends with them. Simply in one fell swoop. And learning that, that's a story for another day. But I think thinking about not having these people in my life anymore, really the the community, thinking about that as a whole, not having that in my life, I would say has been really sad. It's been sad. And my community has shifted since then. I don't talk to certain people, but it was also eye-opening. It was cathartic to go through that process for me to see who was really for me, who who understood me, who had curiosity about what it was that I was going through. It was a really eye-opening experience and it did help me. It's helped me ever since then, at the end of 2020, beginning of 2021, for me to realize like some of these people are not for me. And it has helped me approach my friendships going forward. So there has been a learning opportunity there for me, and it has been beneficial. But I have been grieving the loss of that community, seeing the same people once a week, maybe more than that, kind of building that routine. I've had to now build that back up again. And it has been a slower roll because I haven't been going to church, so like that built-in structure of weekly we're seeing each other, I don't have that in my life. I have to make sure that I'm making the plans with people who are still in my life. And this is kind of a continuation from the evolution of friendship. episode that I released back. It's higher up in the, or I guess lower down in the feed. Take a look if you haven't been able to see that episode just yet. Um, but yeah, I have it's shifted essentially. But losing that church community has been like a pillar lost, basically. And I, excuse me, am still grieving that pillar loss out of my life. And you might be thinking, well, Melissa, just go back to a church, like find a new church home. And it's not really that easy because there are things with the church, the big C, that I am still grappling with. And I don't feel safe going back to a church at this point. And so I don't want to force myself to go back simply to gain that structure of seeing people weekly because it would feel hollow. And I think it would put me in a place where I won't be able to show up as my best self because I would be feeling cautious and I wouldn't be diving in like I had before. And granted, maybe I don't want to dive in the way that I did before, but I don't want to I don't want to think about I don't want to second guess myself essentially when I go back to if and when I go back to a church space. I don't want to go in there feeling jaded. I don't want to go in there having bad energy and I'm assuming everyone around me is fake. So I don't want to jump the gun on trying to rebuild that specific community, but I will say with the people who are still by my side after leaving that space, I have been more intentional with making sure that I am seeing them. I am checking in. We are really like diving into those friendships versus having them remain at surface level. And the workspace, this is something that, I had grown up in church and I understood I'm always going to, you kind of expect building community when you go to church or into a religious space. That's kind of built into the the institution. But when it comes to work, you don't necessarily well, I'll say I don't didn't necessarily have that expectation because I didn't really know what to expect going into work. I started going to work when I was 16 and I was working in a space where there were a lot of older people there and so that community just wasn't really built in. I wouldn't hang out with these people outside of work. Everyone was pleasant and cordial, but it wasn't something where I was exchanging numbers with them. Um, but this where I'm working now, and actually where I had worked before, maybe I'll just say corporate America because I'm older, maybe not even just corporate America. It might be because I'm older. So it is a place where I can make friends. And some people might be like, no, I'm not trying to be friends with anybody in the workplace. And I 100% respect that decision because I understand that it can be tricky. You don't really know people's true motives sometimes when you are becoming friendly with them at work because you're coworkers, you're not friends, you're not family usually. So you don't really know everything and you want to be able to protect your job. So some people might be like, "No, Melissa, I'm losing you there when it comes to actually trying to be friends with people at work." But I have been blessed in the way where I have been able to make some really good friendships from work. Granted, I'm not friends with everybody, and I'm not recommending that you be friends with everyone. Not at all. But I have been able to make friends with people, and it's been a lot of fun. And it was really great to see them 5 days a week. Sometimes if people are feeling spontaneous, go out to happy hour after work, or maybe there's a concert nearby that you buy a $20 ticket to last minute and you go and you have a good time and you get to bond with your coworkers, learn more about them, and have a good time. And currently, post pandemic, that's not happening. And I do go into the office some days out of the week. And some days I'll see my coworkers, some days I won't. Some days we will plan something, but it's just not as spontaneous as it used to be. And that could be because people have gotten married, people have children, people maybe moved during the pandemic, so maybe they live out in the suburbs where it's just harder to, do something a little bit spontaneous after work. And so all of those things are all well and good, but the the thing that I'm really missing is how it was before. And even now when I do see some coworkers, like the rapport isn't what it used to be. I wouldn't say necessarily on my team, but other people who I know on other teams, maybe you'd run into them in the kitchen or maybe you all decide to go out to lunch together. And so you're continuing to like build those friendships with those people who aren't on your team. But now when I see some people who aren't on my team, like that back and forth is kind of gone because you're not really talking to them like you used to because you would see each other 5 days a week. There were more opportunities to talk to that person and get to know them. But now, like, it's almost like starting over, and people's priorities might have changed. Like, I might be one of the only people who is thinking, like, oh, excuse me, it would be nice to go to happy hour with these people or like check in, Maybe some people are back on the other side of thinking this is work and I'm gonna separate that from my home life, my friendship life, and like we're just gonna keep it moving. And I can respect that too. So I guess this episode is more around grieving those losses, because I know that I'm never gonna get that back the way that it used to be. And with regards to work, I'm never trying to go back into a space for 5 days a week. I'm never trying to go back into that space for 5 days a week because it's a lot. It's a lot. Life has changed so much in the past 5 years that it would be a lot for me to go back to work every day. To have to go back to work every day. And I respect those people who have to do that. And I hope if you are doing that, that you are able to build that community at work and feel safe when you go to work and feel like at least you have someone to commiserate with or vent to. I hope that you have someone at work that you can trust, to like be yourself with, that you don't have to mask for those 8, 10, 12 hours a day that you're going into work. I hope that you are able to be yourself at least with one or two people. That is my hope for everyone. But this is more of like I'm grieving. I've been processing that I have been grieving the loss of that community, seeing people, even I still have a community that I have continued to build and cultivate, but it's like I'm never gonna get that back. So I'm grieving never getting that back and it looking a different way. So I just wonder, if there are things that you all are grieving post pandemic that you know that you're never going to get back, whether you build something new that could kind of look like that. What are the some of the things that you are grieving? So this episode was a little bit more somber, but I do think that we owe it to ourselves to reflect and think about those things that we have been quietly grieving, that maybe you haven't realized that you've been grieving, and to take that time to, check in with yourself and see where it is that you can show up for yourself, see how you can try to build something up that you feel like you've lost. Whether it might look a little bit different, but check in with yourself. And I want to go to my next episode, or not next episode. I want to go into my segment called Pod Corner. And Pod Corner is where I recommend a podcast to you all that I have been listening to and really either loving or finding a lot of good information out of it. Maybe it's educational or maybe it's just funny or, you have a good time listening to it. And this podcast that I have to recommend you all, it's called CityCast Chicago. Now, this is a local podcast to where I live, and it's a news podcast. And they talk about anything and everything that is affecting Chicago, all the different neighborhoods. They talk about things that the mayor is doing, the Board of Education here in Chicago. They talk about Chicago public schools. They talk about really anything and everything. A lot of different things with food and entertainment, the lakefront, the bike path, just everything. It runs the gamut when it comes to everything that they're talking about with Chicago. No stone is left unturned. And it is a news podcast. So I recommend that to you all. It's like 30 minutes a day, Monday through Friday. And there are also other cities under CityCast. I know that they have Denver. I don't remember the other cities, but if you don't live in Chicago and you're curious if they have a podcast in your city, look up CityCast in your podcast feed, and if your city is there, it'll pop up. So yes, CityCast Chicago. I recommend that for its news. The host is really cool. And he's very knowledgeable. He's also a storyteller. It's Jacoby Cochran. He's a storyteller. He also teaches, I think, and he's just very knowledgeable in what he's doing. And it's a great podcast. I highly recommend it. So, yes, this has been another episode of the Me in the Making podcast. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you recommend it to your friends and family. And I'll see you next week. Bye. This has been another episode of the Me in the Making podcast. Please rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. Subscribe to this YouTube channel. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Tell a friend, tell a family member. We all deserve to grow and change and become our best selves, whatever that might look like to you. And please connect on Instagram at Making Me Pod, on TikTok. You can email me at meli@makingmepod.com. I would love to hear from you. Let me know if you want to be a guest on the show. And yeah, I'm just having such a great time. I'm so happy to have been able to launch this video episode for you all, and come again. Bye.